Today, we're putting the tears into the Tearlament players, because in the next 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to learn how to beat Tearlaments. By the time we're done with this season, you're not going to be able to go to a Japanese onsen anymore because of the amount of tattoos of all the people you slayed in this format. Lame joke aside, remember guys to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe, ding that notification bell. And in this video, we're going to break it down like this. We're going to start with their opening plays, their popular variants, and stuff they leave on board. Because this deck does involve a bit of RNG, we can't really talk about how they end their board because we really don't know until they start flipping cards off the top of their deck. But they do have a standard line that they like to follow, and we can start breaking stuff down like that. Then we'll go into hand trap interaction. Hand traps have a very specific function this time, rather than completely just stunning the play out. There are things that you're trying to do and you're trying to interact this time, so it's a little bit simpler in that case. And in terms of blowout cards, we got a list of blowout cards you guys can definitely try out. Anyways, let's go. Bring everybody up to speed. We're gonna start with the basic Tearlament stuff so that you don't play into time, so you understand all these card effects and help you read their hand a little bit better and faster. For the Tearlament fusion effect of Havness, Merly, and Scarin, note that they get to perform the fusion summon effect when they're sent to the graveyard only by card effect, not by cost. So that's really important to, you can't just super poly into more cards. They send cards from the hand, field, or graveyard back into the bottom of the deck, so that's really important. And if you are fusing stuff that's face down or in your hand, note that your opponent gets to confirm what that material is to confirm that it is a legal summon that you're performing. And note, I will be doing a ruling segment about that, but essentially it's basically the same as Gladiator Beast, putting their Gladiator Beast to do their contact fuse. As for the mill 3 effects off of these monsters, Merly, normal summon or special summon, mill 3 cards. Havness, whenever your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, special summon this card, mill 3 cards. And then Scarin has the ignition of special summoning herself out by sending another monster from the hand and mill 3 cards after you perform the summon. And yes, all these cards more or less can get hit by an Ash Blossom, but the only one that's not worth hitting is probably Merly, because that one doesn't really generate the body is already there. As for the last monster that is one of the best openings in the entire deck, it has got to be Rhino Heart. That is a Foolish Burial that leads to the fusion summoning. So let's go into the lines of play. Bad openings. Even though the bad openings don't really sound very good, if they hit a couple of good cards with the 3 cards that they mill, they're still probably going to develop a full board. So normal summoning out Merly is a pretty bad one. It just tells you that they don't have Rhino Heart. And as for starting off with a Scarin, this one's a bit weird because if you have multiple hand traps, sure, you can prevent the body from landing, but if they have nothing, then this would be their only mill play. If they do have something such as a Rhino Heart in their hand, then they could be using the Scarin to bait you out of your Ash, and then they get to drop the Rhino Heart. If you're not sure, then you should probably hit something down the line when we get to the hand trap section. As for the good opening play of Rhino Heart, okay, normal summon out Rhino Heart, send the Merly into the graveyard. Using the Merly and the Rhino Heart, perform a fusion summon with the Kit Kalos. Now, depending on how things go here, things can deviate a little bit. If you did not fuse with the Rhino Heart and Rhino Heart is still on the field, you're likely going to see a Scarin added to hand because there's something else to ditch, and you can go into a time thief redoer, which is also really, really strong. And then if you don't have anything else, you would add a Merly so that you can get an additional mill. If Merly is already in hand, you would probably add a Havness if you went first, so they have a follow-up fusion during your opponent's turn and you don't have access to another level 4. So there's a lot of deviations depending on what's available on the field. And then basically Kit Kalos would send itself to summon a Merly back out, causing a Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2 scenario where there's going to be a mill 5 and a mill 3. That's going to be a lot of resources, and as for how that board's going to end, who knows? It really depends on what gets thrown into the graveyard. King of the Swamps, Fallen of Albaz, all those cards could really just change up what's available on the board. And as for build variants, we have for the most popular 3, Pure Build, Branded Build, and Punk Chaos Build. So Pure Build, they still play King of the Swamp, which is why I'm using King of the Swamp as my image. It's very clean cut, very consistent, and it tries to maximize on the number of Tearlament monsters you have so that the Havness push will lead to a fusion, lead to a different play, and ultimately it plays a wider hand trap space, so it does have a huge form of disruption and perhaps plays even more of the trap cards so that they can land their mills properly. And that one is still really good. It can out advantage anybody because, well, Tearlaments can just do that anyway. As for the branded build, one of the issues of the pure build is that Ash does hurt when it hits your Havness and you can't, land the additional milling. So what you do is that you outplay it by giving too many things to Ash so that you have branded fusion and the Tearlament stuff. So you get access to stuff like Mirror Jade. You can play defensively by using Aluber. If you want to crack a board, Mirror Jade's great for cracking boards, but also Fall Off Albaz because also fusion with your opponent's stuff. So it definitely gives you another angle to play, but this one definitely plays less hand traps overall because brandeds aren't exactly known for playing their hand traps. And then there's the Chaos Ruler build. This is the one that is kind of chain blocky, gives you synchro options to Barone, and you have massive milling plays from Chaos Ruler milling a bunch of cards into Kid Kalos milling a bunch of cards. We're looking at milling maybe 13 cards, and if you mill 13 cards with this deck, you basically have access to everything, and you do get to play Baron. You can go into a Shaddoll Falco when you summon into Hulk, and then you can use the Chaos Ruler, and boom, you have an instant level 10 synchro, which gives you more options. So this one is also very scary, and there's a lot of things that you can definitely push with Chaos Ruler. So for typical opening play, everyone's like, oh, they're gonna open with a Winda and stuff like that. Let me just kind of explain the opening breakdown. Most common monster, Draco Stapeli, because it's respondable and lets you negate and change something to level 1. Second most common, if they manage to keep the Rhino Heart and summon the Scarin, then you're gonna see a Time Thief Redoer. This ultimately gives them access to look at your deck. Not only that, because they steal one of your cards, and if they get a spell, they get a draw. But on top of that, they also get to fuse during your turn in response. And in response, it was some of the ones that are glowing in red, which would be Winda, Kaleidoheart, and Kaliga. Winda and Kaliga are not common monsters that get put onto the field right away because they trip over. Say if they have Havness, it gets tripped over. If you put out, say, a Time Thief Redoer, it gets tripped over because you only have like one summon and one effect. It becomes very difficult to play, and they kind of lose their own response. And after you trip over your own play, then they like just wipe you with a Dark Ruler. Then that really sucks. So usually you don't really see those until they see that the opponent is now needing to push into more effects or more summons. Then they get to hit by a Floodgate Winda or a Kaliga. As for Thousand Eyes Restrict, if a King of the Swamp gets milled early, you're going to see an early King of the Swamp. As for the Mirror Jade and the Baron, that just means that they opened with an E-Telly or they have a branded fusion. So that's kind of how you can break the board down. Likely it's Draco Stapelia and the Time Thief Redoer. Note that there is another monster that's not part of the opening play. That's gotta be the Guardian Chimera. Because people play King of the Swamp, this means that it's really easy to search for the Poly or the Fusion substitute, so it's an option to crack your board. Some people just win by playing that. They have 3 hand traps in the hand, normal summon on hand trap, play Poly, break the board, draw a couple new cards, and then they just go right off. So you can't really underestimate what they're gonna do, but these are some of the most common options you're gonna see. And guys, before we go into the hand traps, make sure you guys check out MSTmerch.com. This is our merch site, and we give you guys card game supplies from oversleeves to protect your beautiful foil sleeves that you guys got from whichever event that you got it from. Or check out our white sleeves that are very, very popular, and you guys just can't get enough of that stuff. But the oversleeves have sold out at least twice now, so we've got a huge shipment already here. It's arrived, it's restocked, and it's available for you guys. We also have mats, we have box dividers, and we're gonna have new products available very, very soon. I just have to make sure I finish my regional planning and get the whole regional done, and then I'm going to launch all that stuff. So stay tuned and check out MSTmerch.com. For hand traps, we can do preventions and counterplay, and luckily these hand traps have very specific purposes of what you're trying to do rather than trying to stop someone from building a board like sprites. So versus the fusing effect, you can use DD Crow. DD Crow is the best one, has the best timing because you can weave through like a Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2 and just hit the right card regardless by banishing that particular card. But more on DD Crow and Ash in a second. We're going to go into a bit more detail for those. Ghost Bell and Skullmeister can do something similar as long as it's only one chain link. And in terms of ashing Halfness, this is a really good preventative play. Top decking into an Ash is not exactly a bad thing, which is why I still keep 3 Ashes in the sided games, because you can stop Halfness from performing additional fusion, or rather prevent them from summoning and getting additional fusions out. Versus Scarin, this is not very good. I don't think you would do it personally unless you understand that it's a very simplified game state. Then cool, but if it's a simplified game state, why not? Same with Merly, unless it's like top decking, they're normal summoning up Merly, then you would ash it. Otherwise, I wouldn't really bother. There's just way too many things that they can extend into, such as like Branded Fusion, which is like a way better card. As for the Rhino Heart, you can hit it with an Imperm if you want to, but that is something I would only do if I was holding a DD Crow on top. If you have multiple hand traps, you can definitely hit it, but if you don't have multiple hand traps, it's definitely not worth it. You'd rather hit something like Kid Kalos, preventing the search, summon, and the mill 5 of the effect, which is way more value. I get that they have a Kid Kalos on the field, which kind of sucks because if it gets sent to the grave or by card effect, yeah, they're going to get that mill 5 regardless, but you can also use the Imperm to hit the Chaos Ruler. That's great. And again, mill 5 prevention. The whole point is preventing them from mill 5, but like Kid Kalos is the one card that you definitely want to stop every effect a part of that. DD Crow can also hit like stuff like Shaddoll monsters. This is something that you have to read to do, because if you're going to die to into a Winda, because you can't summon and you have a way to prevent the Winda from landing. Then you can use that DD Crow to get rid of the Shaddoll monster and maybe get them to fuse away some of the stuff that you don't want to answer on the board. If they have, like, say, their Predator Plant already on the board and they have to fuse away the Predator Plant, that's good news for you. Now they're gonna have to get rid of their own Predator Plant, and I guess they just wasted their fusion effect and they have to shuffle back a material from their graveyard, which is, like, sure, the board state didn't really change, but at least that's the less things that you have to worry about. Like, good, the board state didn't change, your hand trap worked. And then there's Winda. Of course, you can save the Imperm for later, but be careful, this doesn't always work, because if they do land another, say, a Scarin or a Havness or whatever, one of the fusing effects, they could just remake another Winda, and you're gonna have to eat it. And then you can always hit Time Thief Redoer with an Ash Blossom. Always, even if it doesn't have a spell card, you can do it, because it's not guaranteed that they can't attach a spell card, so it's very much like Shaddoll Fusion and Ash. You can always hit Shaddoll Fusion with an Ash. Yeah, go figure, right? And as for bad hand traps, I don't recommend using Gamma or Ghost Ogre, both of these cards, because if you activate them on any of those Tearlament monsters, even though you prevent them from milling, they're going to perform a fusion, and that's bad. That's really bad. Or if you do the Ghost Ogre on any of them, then they get the milling and the fusing effect. Good luck, go figure. Alright, so those are pretty bad. Nibiru typically won't really work overall unless you're going into the Punk build. The Punk build do play into it from time to time, but if you have D-Shifter in your deck, you're playing like the Fish deck or the Bird deck, then dropping a D-Shifter ultimately skips their entire turn because they're not fusing for anything. As for Ash and Crow timing, I really want to elaborate on this because this is one of the more crucial interactions to see if you can win the match or not. So Ash, on your own turn, save it for Havness and redo it. These are very big disruption trades that you're going for, because if they go for Havness and they get to perform a fusion, we're looking at stuff like Winda, Kaleido Heart, or maybe Kaliga, and those are devastating when it comes to just trying to play on your own turn. So Ash could be an enabler for you to play on your own turn. On their turn, unless it's branded fusion or like a Kit Kalos Surge or something really big, I think you should just save it for like Rhino Heart and branded fusion. Ultimately, just those two cards. Save the Ash. I think you should not waste it because you just get to do more with Ash on your own turn. As for the DD Crow, the timing and target of this, if there's multiple like Tearlament Dark Monsters milled into the graveyard, wait for the chain to build. Don't shotgun the card, because if your opponent's not done building their chain, you're screwed, because once they see the DD Crow, they're going to activate both. That's just how it is. So you wait for them to activate, see how they build their chain. If they only activate one, then feel free to use the DD Core to prevent the fusion of that particular monster, because they can't activate the second one anymore. That's a done deal. Those are trigger effects. Trigger effects cannot reactivate any further. So that's good for you. But if they activate both, now you have to consider other things. Start counting the potential fusion material in their graveyard and on the field. That's really important, especially the field part, because if you can get rid of, say, like a King of the Swamp, something that they really want to fuse into, or maybe a Shaddoll monster that was going to go into like a Winda, or get rid of their Rhino Heart so they can't go into basically if they can't go into their what's their name, like Kaleido Heart, it's good because now they have to fuse away something else, and if they have to fuse away their bosses that were going to go for the kill, that's good news for you because they already activated the effect. They have to perform that fusion. And the other best part is that they have to be so careful with this when you crow their fusion material, because if they activated both and they can fuse with both, they have to perform both fusions. And that's also why DD Crow can suddenly just be like a game-breaking shift in the momentum. So yeah, just be careful with the DD Crow. Now here are 10 high impact cards from what I've seen in people's side decks so far. Dimensional Barrier, whenever that gets activated, I typically lose, but sometimes I do have that red reboot, so it's okay. As for DDG, kind of the same deal. If they activate, it's a turn skip. It's a very powerful turn skip. Most of the cards on top are mainly for going first. Macrocosmos, I played against a Fish deck. That was not very fun. Yeah, Fish deck can really do some major damage, especially when they put up Macrocosmos. It hurts a lot without any fusion material. Abyss Dweller, stunning out my entire graveyard. Not the end of the world. As long as you have King of the Swamp and you can fuse into a Chimera, you can still play through it. And even for Macrocosmos, same idea. Chimera is your one out against Macrocosmos, and if they negate that, then it's GG, because you're not going to be able to put the poly into the graveyard, which means you can still get negated by like an imperm. Then there's Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. That one's one of the worst ones. It literally shuts out the entire deck, and it almost like doesn't even matter which build you're playing. Shadow Imprisoning Mirror kind of hits everything. As for going second, Super Poly hurts a lot. Super Poly like stings because there's no response, and thanks for the free material, I guess. Mystic Mine, I use this in Sprite to take out the Tearlament matchup. I use it to take out all the fusion matchups. It's so good. And the reason why it's like really good, even if they put up like a Mirror Jade on the field, is that they get punched away. They're gonna summon out the Sky Cavalry, punch it away, put it back into the deck, and then go into Zeus and wipe the rest of the board. It sucks. It hurts a lot, and they just establish a Toad board and you basically died. Lava Golem hurts a little bit, but if you have Halfness or you have hand traps, you can still play. Ghost Reaper on the Kit Kalos murders the deck, and Dark Ruler is okay. It's a kind of a good and bad card because they can't kill me, and I can definitely like replay. But Dark Ruler disabling the board is pretty good, especially if there's a Winda on board or a Kaliga. It's one of those cards you don't really have to activate immediately, but only when like the threat comes onto the board, then you can activate Dark Ruler. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of clear the board. But these are all high impact cards. And that's it for how to beat Tearlaments. This is probably just a part 1, as the deck is going to evolve over time, especially when new support comes out and it just gets even stronger. And I think some of these old strats are not going to be as viable. So make sure you guys subscribe, ding that notification bell so you can stay tuned with more MST.TV goodness. We're going to get into some live duels very soon. And if you guys have any other suggestions down in the comment section, feel free to leave it there. More how to beat or other card suggestions, I'm here, and I'm pretty sure everyone else is going to check out the comment section. And I guess don't forget to check out MSTmerch.com, and I'll see you guys in the next one.